The Pittsburgh Steelers were back in practice on Monday and continued doing so on Tuesday, but we got to hear from Joe Haden and Mike Tomlin both talking about James Pierre, the guy that may be playing on the outside cornerback spot a lot more than people anticipated this year. Joining with me, of course, is the leader of the James Pierre hype train, Tony Serino, for a Tony Tuesday on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, anywhere you get your podcast. Check us out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us out. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. But as you guys know, most weeks, well, lately we haven't had him a lot, but we finally got him back on the show because it's not just any Tuesday, because it's time for a Tony Tuesday. What's up, Tony Serino? Welcome back to the show.
Happy to be back and happy to be talking about my boy James Pierre today. It's a beautiful day. The Steelers win in preseason and look good doing it. Ben Roethlisberger looks good. James Pierre, he was out there. He played. That happened.
Indeed. One thing I got to remind our listeners before we get too far into the show, the NFL season is about to begin and nobody covers it like the Locked On Podcast Network. So August 30th through September 8th on the Locked On NFL Podcast, we are previewing every team in every division with the help of Odyssey's lineup of NFL experts. Follow the Ultimate Season Preview 2021 feed on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast to tune in beginning August 30th. That's a week from today's show, August 23rd. Now, Tony, James Pierre, one thing that Joe Haden talked about at Steelers practice after it was over on Monday was that guy's earned every shot that he gets. Mike Tomlin talked about how, yes, you saw him lining up on the outside with Sutton on the inside, but Mike Tomlin talked about how a lot of that isn't necessarily just we're always going to stick to this. A lot of that is going to be about situational, coverage groups and get it working to get certain matchups. So it's clear to me. And he talked about this on Wednesday before the Lions game. We saw it in that Wednesday practice before the Lions game at one point where I tweeted out they had 5 different combinations of either linemen and secondary switching out between each other in a span of 4 plays. It was just ridiculous. But then we saw in the game a lot of James Pierre on the outside, a lot of Sutton on the inside, partially because Arthur Mollett did get hurt and couldn't finish the game. Mike Tomlin also said he's day-to-day, so they should hope to get him back soon. But all signs point, though, this team is not afraid to use James Pierre on the outside.
No, and I think by all reports, and I think you've said this as well, right? James has had a really good training camp. I mean, his practices have been good, and he's kind of elevated himself to very clearly, I think at this point, the third corner on the roster right after Haden and Sutton. Pierre's kind of next up, although he is getting pushed, I guess, a little bit by Justin Lane now,
he's been doing better. Justin Lane has significantly improved from being a guy that was maybe a roster cut to now it's like you're part of the rotation, buddy.
Yeah, and I think that's exciting. That's exciting even for me, who's an admitted James Pierre fanboy, right? You don't want to see your guy get pushed. James Pierre kind of entered this conversation as the kind of the de facto number 3 because Lane had been so poor in years past, and to see Lane kind of ascend up now, it's going to push Pierre because Pierre, I thought, a lot of people sent me messages, Chris, after the first preseason game and saying, the Pierre hype train is over. I thought Pierre had a really good game against the Cowboys.
I did too. I don't know what they were looking at.
Yeah. I mean, he had the one third down over the middle. But other than that, I thought he was fine. And then against the Eagles, that was good in that one. It's hard for me to evaluate, because no all 22. I mean, trying to evaluate corner play without the all 22. I mean, they leave your screen and then who knows what happens from that point.
Who knows? They could be doing jumping jacks or doing the hokey pokey. We don't know.
But I think, and you were there, I think, so you can tell me. But I thought Pierre was not great against the Lions.
He wasn't the guy who had been on his P's and Q's pretty much all through training camp, all through the first 2 preseason games. Because the thing with what James Pierre, what has made him to me a guy that I keep my eye on is that he's rarely out of position, that he's normally in his spot. And when you're in your spot consistently, that's where if a quarterback makes a mistake, you're more ready to make a play on that ball. And that's what we've seen out of James Pierre. It just seemed like in this game, he was less settled in and being in the right spot more consistently throughout the game. Nothing that was extremely alarming, but like that could have gone better for James Pierre.
Yeah, and I thought the play that kind of to signify that the most was the one where Lane nearly had the pick. It was Pierre and Lane kind of together in coverage down the field. You would have Lane has traditionally been the guy who's like you said, not in position, just a little off his guy, trailing behind, and then Pierre's the one coming in to make the play. But in this case, the roles were reversed, and it was Lane making the play and Pierre kind of trailing. So, it's one game, it's preseason. I'm not going to sound any alarm bells. And like you said, he has earned his spot right now as the first outside corner off the bench. And if they're going to put Sutton in the nickel, the only worry I have, as the leader of the James Pierre hype train, the guaranteed spot for him was going to be in the dime, right? He would have to be the outside corner in dime because they would move Sutton over inside in that situation. The Steelers didn't run, I believe, any dime in this latest
I'm not
game.
sure they're going to run much dime so long as Joe Schobert and Devin Bush are available at linebacker, because remember, that was something that crushed the Steelers in the playoff game when they had to go to dime because the Browns would spread them out and then they would just run the ball anyways. And that put them in a rough spot. Yeah. I think the Steelers want to have a situation where, like, hey, we have two linebackers in the middle of the field for every formation because we want to stop the run and cover the pass.
Yeah, so in that case, I think Pierre may get if there is an outright winner of the nickel corner battle that is not Cam Sutton, right? If Millette comes back or if Antoine Brooks wins that spot outright and Sutton can stay on the outside, then James Pierre may be limited like he was last year to just some random dime spots, or if there's any injury to Sutton or Hayden, that's when you're going to see Pierre. But still, I'm excited for the kid. This is a guy who's come a long way. Last year he was an undrafted free agent, made his way on special teams, and then earned his spot to eventually get reps in that playoff game. And now here he is as the third corner on this team and potentially even starting in the nickel.
Absolutely. That's something that you want to look at and see how he progresses. And one thing that was made clear, though, Joe Hayden, Joe said, man, was like, we love having Cam because he knows he can play outside, inside, and he's comfortable either way. And he's very smart. And he talked about that in his post-practice interview. So very good stuff there from those guys. And the James Pierre hype train, I wouldn't say it's stopped in the least. I'd say maybe it's slowed its roll a little bit, but Tony, is there still time to get on the hype train?
Listen, there's now is the buy low, Steelers fans. Okay, now is the time to get back on here because and the thing I like is this, it's not necessarily a 2-dog 1-bone situation as Tomlin likes to say with Lane and Pierre, because both guys are likely to make the roster. But again, I think the idea that Lane played so well, that's going to push Pierre. He's going to have to play better against Carolina. Or, I'm not to say Lane's going to beat out Pierre when we get to the regular season, but much like we saw a year ago, Lane started as the third corner, and then it became James Pierre as the season went on. That could happen to Pierre. He could get beat out by Lane if Lane keeps playing well. So he's getting pushed right now on this roster.
Certainly. Don't forget, Tony Serino is the leader of the James Pierre hype train. He started it right here in the Locked On Steelers podcast back in February. This man was like, get on the hype train. So if you're on the hype train with James Pierre, that he is your conductor. But there's another hype train that Tony has been leading for years, back when he was the co-host with me of this show. We're going to talk about that hype train because if you're a long time listener to the show, you know exactly who I'm talking about. You probably know why we're talking about it. We'll get into that right after I tell you guys about betonline.ag. It's that time of the year again, and all eyes are now on to football as teams are back on the gridiron to start the football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updates on odds, props, and contests, including the $500,000 NFL mega contest and the $200,000 NFL subscriber contest, which are open now at BetOnline. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 100% welcome bonus. Be sure to take advantage of their opening day super promo and by making a bet on Thursday, September 9th, on the season opener between the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose that bet, your wager will be refunded up to $25. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, from football to basketball to boxing, right down to horse racing. Don't wait to get in and take advantage of all the great offers available for the 2021 season at betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. And back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, with Tony Serino for a Tony Tuesday. Let's keep it rolling here. Now, obviously, Tony, you have been the leader, the champion, the advocate for Devlin Hodges, the former fourth-string Duck Hodges, as everyone always says. For those who don't understand what we're doing here with this joke, if you're new to this show or this channel,
it's not a joke to me, Chris.
It's not, no. So you see how hyped this man is to talk about some Devlin Hodges. Now, mind you, the news is he got waived, so he's no longer with the Rams. He didn't make it there. That was his first team after the Steelers. Obviously, Tony's feeling some type of way. But to give you the full context, Tony and I used to be the co-hosts of this show. We were at every Steelers training camp practice in 2019, and like all throughout the practice, because that was, Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph, Josh Dobbs, and then Devlin Hodges. And the whole time, Tony's like, "Oh, this duck guy, he's so good." And I'm like, he's not even going to make the team. He's going to get cut. Why are you doing this every episode? Mm-hmm. So it was a running joke that we had, but Tony was serious. He was like, "Oh, I think this guy's really good." And then, of course, the final 53-man roster comes out. Devlin Hodges is released, but then, of course, the disaster struck the Steelers. They traded away Josh Dobbs, and then Ben Roethlisberger went down, and then Mason Rudolph went down, and then they needed Devlin Hodges, and then he came in and won several games for them on their way to finishing 8-8, 8-6 without Ben Roethlisberger. So Tony, that whole season was just the champion of the Duck hype train.
Absolutely.
But Tony, your boy, cut from the Rams, or waived from the Rams to be specific. How are you doing right now, man? I know this has got to be hard on you.
Well, you know what? The Rams are, look, Tony has I have a most hated teams list. It used to be topped by the Cleveland Browns and Baltimore Ravens, but you know what? LA Rams, guess what? Welcome to the top of the list, Sean McVay, you fake good coach. Oh, this guy is so
fake good coach.
Oh, he's fake.
You just came at Sean McVay for getting rid of Devlin Hodges.
Yeah, this guy's, look, I mean, listen, this guy has absolutely no idea what he's doing over there running this team. He's basically running the Rams into the ground at this point. And you know what? Listen, he's in a division with three other quality teams. They'll finish fourth this year, no doubt about it. They have no idea what they're doing talent evaluation wise. Yeah, I'm sad today. I was sad. Look, I had a feeling Devlin was going to get cut when he didn't get a single snap in the. By the way, have I watched both Rams preseason games this year, Chris?
No, Tony, you did it.
I did.
Oh no, Tony!
I did, which makes today hurt even worse. Well, it hurt
when your time for
when we got into the fourth quarter. I remember I got into the fourth quarter, and I'm like, are they really not going to put Duck in this game at all? We're gonna. Look, Bryce Perkins. I get that they want to see as much of him because he's a rookie, but like give Duck a chance at all. And they didn't. And then I had a feeling that this was coming. I didn't think it would come in the 80-man cut down. I thought they would wait till the 53. Give Duck the respect he deserves. You'll remember, Chris, on Fantasy Draft Friday, this is a Mount Rushmore Steeler player, okay, in my book. You put him up there with guys like Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Terry Bradshaw, Duck Hodges. that just rolls right off. But you know what, Chris? Duck now will enter into a long line of long disrespected Steeler backup quarterbacks. I'm talking, of course, about guys like Landry Jones, Dennis Dixon, Brian St. Pierre, T. Martin, Omar Jacobs, and most recently, we need to talk about this.
Mason Jacobs, of all people.
Oh, listen, totally disrespected by the coaches. I believe he didn't even make it out of training camp that year.
He did. So how is he disrespected?
He was disrespected by the coaching staff. I was all in on the Omar. Listen, the original Tony hype train was probably Omar Jacobs because at the time I was 21. So I was all in on Omar Jacobs.
You were 21 in 2006.
Yes.
Whoa.
I think so.
I thought
I'm not good at math. We've done this on the show many times where we find out that Tony, simple math live on air is the worst thing that you can do to me. But we need to talk about Mason Rudolph because he is very clearly the next in that line. The fan base right now has absolutely turned on Mason Rudolph.
They have turned on Mason.
He got booed. He got booed in that game, right?
Yeah.
What is happening? Because and I thought about making a video on my channel about Mason Rudolph versus Dwayne Haskins, and then I thought to myself, I don't need this kind of hate mail in my life. Like I'm actually good.
You want death threats?
Yeah, I really don't. I really don't. Unless you come down hard on the Haskins side, you are going to get people telling you that you have no idea what you're talking about. But I got to be honest, Chris. I'm going to say this light so that the people in the back don't hear it. I think Mason's been pretty good in preseason.
Yeah, he's been good. He's been solid. He's been exactly what you wanted from a backup quarterback.
Yes, and the thing I think that's the biggest growth I've seen out of Mason is that he's got this confidence. Remember Mason used to be like the deer in headlights. Oh my! If the first read's not there,
yeah.
What I liked about him now is that he's very comfortable with this team, with the receivers that he's playing with. He's got those reads where he just comes back, knows right where he's going with the football before the ball's even snapped. He knows right where he's going, thrown right off his back foot. That's the stuff you didn't see from Mason in years past, and so. It's not a surprise to me that the coaching staff feels comfortable with him, and he's basically won this backup spot, even though Haskins played so well. The whole Mason thing has been really weird to watch to me this offseason.
So you're saying that Mason Rudolph has earned the number 2 spot from the Steelers?
Oh, yes. Please don't DM me.
So what you're really saying is the Steelers don't need to go get Devlin Hodges right now.
No, they need a fourth quarter. Yeah, no, they absolutely need a future, right? I mean, like, we know Mason's not the future. Haskins could be, but again, 2 dogs, 1 bone, Chris, 2 dogs, 1 bone. You got to push Dwayne Haskins. You need a guy in there to push Haskins. They absolutely need to bring in Devlin, and they need to do it immediately. Yeah.
My goodness, sir. My goodness. Like you just don't stop ever.
I will. Yeah, can't stop, won't stop. You want to talk about my by the way, another guy? I think we talked about Jonathan Dwyer before, but Jonathan Dwyer also another one of my long line of underappreciated Steelers in the past. They're
they gave him every chance.
No, Jonathan Dwyer was great. I love Jonathan Dwyer.
I mean, he was a fun big guy to have at running back, but like, he got his shots.
He's a big play machine. He is a big play machine, if I remember right.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think he had like
Jonathan
1 or 2
really play machine.
I think he had like 1 or 2 really good big plays, and therefore machine. Much like Duck. 1 or 2 big plays, and therefore machine.
Oh my goodness. Well, Devlin Hodges is a wave from the Rams. So Tony had to mourn him for a segment. We did that. We gave Devlin Hodges his due. So he's not disrespected on this show. So
absolutely not. Never has been. Well, maybe a little bit. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe a little bit.
Maybe there has been, but Devlin, if you're watching this show, you ever want to come on, you hit us up because we will happily talk to you about your experiences. Because again, Tony Serino, he was the first guy that said Devlin Hodges is the man. So that's right there. But I want to talk to Tony about the name of the guy who has his name on Tony's hat right there. Matt Canada. We'll do that in just a minute here, but I want to talk to you guys about rockauto.com, where you can always save time and money by using rockauto.com. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts for your car or truck at a chain store or a car dealership? For example, if you have a Honda Odyssey, your fuel pump might be $353 at a chain store, but at rockauto.com, that same part is $216. That's a lot of savings that you'll get. Rock Auto is a family-owned business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need, from brake parts to tail lamps to motor oil and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and you can see all the parts available for your car or truck. Be sure to write "Locked On" in there "How did you hear about us" box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, wrapping things up here. Chris Carter here with Tony Serino for a Tony Tuesday. Tony, we got to talk about Matt Canada's offense, man, because I don't know about you, but I liked what I saw.
You can't dislike it. Yeah.
Now, here's the one downside about this. This was my biggest criticism of the entire night. Because Matt Canada's offense was so proficient, we only saw 1 punt the entire night. There was supposed to be a battle between Jordan Berry and Presley Harvin, and it was just Presley Harvin punting 50 yards one time, and that was the wrap.
That's right.
Other than I like that.
That's the problem. You can't have a punter battle in a Matt Canada offense. Sorry, it doesn't work. It's too efficient. The Steelers are too good on offense this year. Obviously you have to love what you saw from the offense, and Ben Roethlisberger, as good as he was in that game, he I think he did shut up a lot of the critics. Although the critics who were saying
they won't go away, but
they're not going to go away. But this idea that like Ben Roethlisberger was like Peyton Manning at this point, at the end of his career, we just cannot throw the ball down the field whatsoever. That has always been silly to me. The idea that his arm is completely shot. Like, look, I've criticized Ben a lot, right? I'm, Tony the hater here.
You are Tony the hater. You've earned that.
Ben's problem has not been his arm strength. It's his brain strength has been the issue. I mean, he makes poor decisions. That's the real problem from Ben, whether it's pre-snap or post-snap. I mean, he just makes really stupid decisions at times. We didn't see that in this game, and hopefully we don't see it in the regular season. And I think, you're going to see a little more commitment to the run. We saw more play action in this game. Love to see that. I do like the wrinkle that Matt Canada's added where they play action to nobody. Which
those were some odds mess ups, man. When you're like, okay, we're faking them out. Nobody's there. Never mind.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I know a lot of people criticize the run blocking in the game because the running game really didn't get going with Najee in there. And I think it's when I looked at it, to me it didn't seem like it was so much skill level on the offensive line. Although I do think there might be some issues there, but just kind of everybody being on their P's and Q's in this offense and understanding their assignments in the running game. It felt like too many guys were just completely whiffed blocks and that kind of thing, which you hope will get cleaned up by the time we get to the regular season, or certainly as the regular season progresses. Right, this team's not going to be a finished product when they play Buffalo. This team will be much more of a finished product at the end of the year, and so hopefully that gets better. But yeah, you have to love it. And by the way, I'll say this today, and I've seen Pat Freiermuth like maybe 20 snaps so far. Man, was I wrong about that guy? He catches. I thought this is a guy who was not going to be a physical tight end. Didn't see that on the tape I watched in college. I didn't watch the right tape, I guess. I missed it, but it's there, and you can see it. You can see it in the NFL. Those 2 catches he made in the end zone were awesome. And by the way, I think that we talk about Ben's arm strength. The one to Deontay was like a rainbow ball, but the one, the 2 that he threw to Freiermuth, you had some heat on those, throwing them over the middle.
They were over guys. They had to go over a defender.
Yes. Yeah, and this offense's willingness now to throw the ball over the middle, which you didn't really see, especially deep over the middle. Didn't see it last year. You're seeing it now, even in preseason, where we're just getting little glimpses of what this Canada offense is going to be. How can you not love it? I mean, and then the big plays, like the Najee Harris turning that, what was like a 6 or 7 yard over the middle play into a 46 yarder.
46, yeah.
That's what you absolutely have to see from this offense this year. They need more big plays. They need explosion. This team cannot only be a 10, 12, 14 play drive type of offense. They need those quick strikes. They were getting them during that 11-game winning streak. They did not get them at the end of the season. And that I love to see that as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. One thing, Ben, when we asked Ben about that deep ball after the game in the press conference, the first thing he said was, "I put too much air on it. I needed to make that tighter. It wasn't, and I think it was just a judgment call, right? It was just because also, I mean, does anyone know how hard it is to judge how much force you should put under it when you're flicking the ball out of your hand? It's flying 40 yards downfield. I mean, that's why these guys get paid the big bucks to do this at the quarterback position. But point being, he can get the ball there. We saw him fire the ball out. He still has an arm, like you said. This isn't some Ben Roethlisberger's, falling apart at the seams, and Peyton Manning. Like Peyton Manning couldn't throw it, 20 yards, let alone 30 yards. He was there. I mean, look at Drew Brees last year. He could barely hit a slant over the middle. Ben doesn't have those problems. He's not the same as he used to be, and that's certainly there, because also he had a cannon when he came out of college. I mean, he could throw 50-yard balls on a rope. He can't do that anymore, but you don't need to do that in today's NFL. If you can get the ball 30 yards in the air, you're doing just fine. Yeah, and he can certainly do that. But more to Matt Canada's offense, like you talked about. I asked Mike Tomlin on Monday after practice. I'm like, hey, you guys got a large majority of your first downs through the air. Is that something that was planned, or is that something situational? And do you want to get more on the ground? And he's like, it's more situational. It's just based off of what matchups we see in down and distance. Yeah. But he did kind of indicate like, we'll see about getting first downs on the ground. To call back to the offensive line points you made, Najee Harris had 4 runs for 10 yards. He had 2 gains and 2 tackles for loss. I looked at all 4 of those plays closely. The 2 gains, everyone's on point. Everyone's bullying their guys. The 2 losses, it just took one person missing their assignment, which is why I always say football is the ultimate team sport. No other sport has 11 people that if one person makes one small mistake, the entire play can get blown up. If you get it wrong. And, on the first loss, it was just a matter of Kendrick Green was supposed to chip his man to help chip a man and, at the line of scrimmage. He didn't. And, I think it was Trey Turner eventually ended up letting a guy get in. No, it was Kevin Dotson. Kevin Dotson thought he was getting help from Kendrick Green, and he didn't. And in doing so, that let a guy get right in there. And then the second one, Pat Freiermuth thought he was Pat Freiermuth was pulling and blocking along with Trey Turner, and he ran into the back of Trey Turner. And if he had just seen that his job was to get the other guy that was coming off that edge, Najee Harris isn't even touched, and he has Juju as a lead blocker almost, and he's probably walking down the left side of the formation. So those are coordination. Those are, hey, we haven't played together. That was the first time the starting five played together. The guys that project to be the starting five played together. That's what I say when I say I'm not too worried about this offensive line just yet. They still need to gel, absolutely. But this is not a doom and gloom. They'll never be able to get this type of situation. No,
and there's so many good players. I know you talked about Dan Moore yesterday, so I don't want to re-hit on this topic again. But
you can go ahead.
But how is he not in a position battle? To me, he has been like the standout of all standouts on offense, and maybe even you go to defense. I mean, I know Highsmith has been good, but holy cow, Dan Moore is like a revelation at times.
Yeah.
How is he not in a position battle? This guy should start.
I think that he might quietly be. I'm not saying he is.
Okay.
But I brought up the prospect of, Chukwuma Okorafor arguably had the roughest night of the starters, for that game. If that's the case moving forward, if he doesn't show up better and Dan Moore Jr. keeps looking good, how much do you give him? Now, here's the thing I said also yesterday on the Monday show episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chukwuma Okorafor, veteran, a guy who can adapts to NFL speed. He doesn't have to adapt. He is NFL speed. So he's going to communicate better. There's less of a chance that he's going to miss a block mentally and allow a guy to have a clean shot at Ben Roethlisberger, which is a major deal that you have to watch for. Now, Dan Moore Jr. has done very well in these preseason games. He hasn't let up any pressures, but that changes in the NFL when an NFL defense gets a whole week to look at you and say, okay, this is this guy's weakness. We're going to try to pick at this. We're going to try to use this to our advantage to get a couple hits on that quarterback.
Yep.
And that's easy to do against a rookie, which is why it's never just a given that he's going to take it. But I will say this, he has the physicality part down, and Chukwuma Okorafor needs to step up in this next couple of weeks. Otherwise, it will be a legitimate conversation.
And then you think they moved him to the right side so that he can play the sixth offensive lineman, right? So they can kind of move him
Absolutely.
in.
He's going to be the swing tackle, until something else happens. And I think it's also a matter of, hey, you played like the first 3 weeks of training camp at left tackle. Now play these 3 weeks at right tackle because you are our first replacement, whichever side of the ball we need you on, whether it's the left or the right spot. So I think it's just a matter of getting him comfortable with the spot. But he's earned the chance. Like James Pierre has earned his spot with the cornerbacks. Dan Moore Jr. has earned the right to be, or the privilege to be the next man up when it comes to offensive tackle.
Yeah, and I was saying this on AFC North Talk when we were ranking the offensive lines. I just thought everyone who was saying all offseason that this Steelers offensive line is going to be bad, they're bad, they're a bunch of no names, right? I mean, it was just so silly to hear that offseason. My big point was you can't know what this offensive line is going to be. You got a bunch of young guys in there. It's not like they returned the same 5 guys from a year ago who were, they were bad last season. That offensive line was. This is a new group, and so will they be as bad as they were last year? Maybe, but they very likely are going to be better because this team, as a scouting department, they rarely whiff this hard. So it's not surprising to me that there's a lot of young talent here. That again, like you talked about, as this thing gets going, as these guys get more comfortable with one another, I think this offensive line is going to be just fine midseason.
And if this offensive line is just fine by midseason, and they have a decent record, watch out because now this Matt Canada offense really won't have too many flaws as long as they're healthy. You have 2 playmaker tight ends. You have 4 playmaker and wide receivers. You got a franchise quarterback, a playmaker running back, a solid number 2 back, by the way. Kalen Ballage has looked really good in my opinion.
Not McFarland?
McFarland, I think, is more of the gadget number 2.
Okay.
Like when they need the jet sweeps, when they need the quick, when they need a fast guy to get out in space. Then he's the number 2. And again, Tomlin's talking about situational football. I think in a general sense, when Najee needs to come out and take a breather, if it's a standard play, you'll see Kalen Ballage go in there. But I will say this, Anthony McFarland, one of the biggest questions I had was, can he pass protect? And on that third down protection of Mason Rudolph, he went from one side to the other side of Mason and took out a guy who was like 40 pounds heavier than him and also like 4 inches taller than him. So like that was he acquitted himself well, and I think he's put himself in a situation where it's not an illegitimate conversation to say that he has a shot at getting the second most carries on the team.
Yeah, and I think that for McFarland, he's clearly coming in second in every game. I mean, he's always the first back in after Najee. I just feel like when he's running the ball, I feel like his brain is going a million miles. Like his brain is going as fast as he can, and he just needs
to process things too fast,
too quick. He just needs to slow himself down. If he slowed down just a touch, he would be such a better running back. But I'm excited for him though, because I do think, like you talked about, he can be that change of pace. The real, again, big plays is what this offense is trying to find, and he can certainly be that kind of player.
And he's a Matt Canada guy from Maryland, so we'll see if Matt Canada finds more ways to use him. Tony, thanks as always for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's always a pleasure, man. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Steeler Country. You can follow me on YouTube. I have a show, AFC North Talk. It's a roundtable show all about the AFC North. We are taking the rest of the month off. We're going to come back with a show with all of our hot takes. That will be the first week of September, so check that out. It airs on YouTube live every Tuesday, 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And then you can also find me on my YouTube channel, Steeler Country with Tony Serino. And, of course, you can find me here every Tuesday, especially throughout the regular season. I will be here with Chris on Tony Tuesday. Love coming on with Chris.
Yes, we love having you here, Tony. I'm Chris Carter. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. You can read my work at DKPittsburghSports.com. You can listen to me on Steeler Nation Radio or right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can also watch me on Channel 11. I'm doing Skylights with our girl Jenna Harner. It's always fun to do Skylights with her, doing high school football highlights. If you're in the local Pittsburgh area, it's definitely a treat. We have a lot of fun doing that. Thanks again to Tony for being on the show. Be back in your ears and on your screens tomorrow. We got, of course, Dean and Josh, the agency. We're going to be hyping things up because we do have to talk about things with them and get you get their thoughts on things as we get through the middle of the week. And then we'll also be getting you ready for that game Friday against the Carolina Panthers, where the Steelers are taking them on. And remember, if you're enjoying this show, subscribe to us. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey. You can also get this on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really helps. And if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple, you get a special shout out at the end of the show, like this person, Troy Riff, who leaves us a 5-star review that says, loves this show. I listen to you guys on Spotify every day. Thank you, Troy. We appreciate that. I came here just to leave you guys a 5-star rating and tell you guys that I love the knowledge and entertainment you guys bring every day. Other shows or podcasts just aren't the same. Keep it up. Thanks, Troy Riff. Thank you, Troy Riff. That really means a lot. We try to keep our guests fresh here. We try to get the great content, like people like Tony. I need to go like that way because we're the screen. It's over here. It's over there.
It's the worst. Yeah.
It's the worst. But you too. I'm getting used to being on camera and pointing at Tony Serino. So there we go. Now I'm pointing the right way. Troy Riff, thank you for your 5-star review. If you want your shout out, leave it on Apple Podcasts for us. I'm Chris Carter. Thanks again for listening. Be back in your ears tomorrow.